Hey everyone, Ricardo here giving you Gathering Magic's top picks for Magic Origins. Today, I have Kenji Igashira, aka Numoth and Nummy, to give us our limited picks. Adam is going to help us out in Commander. Kevin is going to go over the cards he is going to brew around for Standard. And I'll be tying a nice bow on everything with the cards that I believe have the most potential in Modern, by going over a common, an uncommon, a rare, and a powerful mythic. With that being said, we have a lot to go over, so let's buckle in as we start off with Gathering Magic's limited master that everyone loves, Kenji Igashira.
Hello friends, Kenji aka Numoth and Nummy, back again, this time for another edition of Top Picks. I'm here for limited, of course, so let's just jump right into it. I'm going to be ranking the top 3 commons, uncommons, rares, and the top mythic, in my opinion, for Magic Origins. Let's start with the commons. I think the number 3 top common in Magic Origins is going to be Separatist Void Mage. Now this is the 2/2 creature for 3 colorless and a blue, and when it enters the battlefield you may return another target creature to its owner's hand. Now in a world filled with renown, I think this is going to be one of the better creatures to have. If your opponent hits you with an early renown creature, this is a great way to get back into the game while also playing out a creature developing your board. If you guys remember like Mistraven or Mana War, anything like that from older sets, you know that creatures that bounce a creature are very, very strong, and at common, you can always pick up multiples. So Separatist Void Mage, 3rd top common. 2nd top common, I'm going to give it to Wild Instincts. We've seen a lot of these fight effects in the previous block, Dragons of Tarkir, Fate Reforged. Wild Instincts is 3 colorless and a green. Target creature you control gets +2/+2 until end of turn, and it fights another target creature an opponent controls. So it's a combat trick and a removal spell. It is a little bit more expensive than we're used to, but I still think it's one of the best commons that you can pick up. So number 2, Wild Instincts. And I think the best common in Magic Origins is going to be the Ghirapur Gearcrafter. Now maybe this is a little bit biased because I loved the Sandstep Outcasts from the previous block, but Ghirapur Gearcrafter is the same exact thing except it's red. It's a 2/1 for 2 colorless and a red, and it puts a 1/1 artifact Thopter with flying into play. So for 3 mana you get a 2/1 and a 1/1 flyer. That's a pretty good deal in my opinion. So best common from Magic Origins, Ghirapur Gearcrafter. Let's move to the uncommons now. I think the 3rd best uncommon is, now, I rated this so highly just because of the potential it has, is the Citadel Castellan. This card is absurd. It is 1 colorless, 1 green, 1 white. It's a 2/3 vigilance, but it has renown too. Now I'm ranking it so highly just because of the potential that can have to end the game so quickly. If you or your opponent's able to cast this on turn 3 and get in the very first time, you have a 4/5 vigilance on turn 4. That is extremely hard to deal with, and I think this format is going to have a lot of Citadel Castellans taking over the game very quickly. So, number 3, top uncommon, Citadel Castellan. Number 2 uncommon, I'm going with the Whirler Rogue, kind of on theme with the Ghirapur Gearcrafter from the commons. Whirler Rogue is a 2 blue, 2 colorless, 2/2. And when it enters the battlefield, you put 2 1/1 Thopters with flying onto the battlefield. All the Thopters are artifacts. It also has the added ability of being able to make a creature unblockable. This card is very good for 4 mana. Again, for 4 mana, you get 4 power and 4 toughness worth of creatures split over 3 creatures, 2 of which are flying. Great uncommon, Whirler Rogue. The number 1 uncommon might not look so good at first, but this card is a powerhouse in Limited. Would highly recommend taking it if you're in Draft or playing it and even splashing it in Sealed because of how cheap it is. Sentinel of the Eternal Watch. This is a 1 white, 5 colorless for a 4/6 vigilance, and you get to tap an opponent's creature on their turn. This card is definitely a bomb, and it's very easily splashable. Number 1 uncommon, Sentinel of the Eternal Watch. Let's move on to the rares now. I'm going to choose number 3, Hangerback Walker. This is the XX artifact creature. that comes into play with, X number of counters on it. And when it dies, you get to put X 1/1 artifact, Flying Thopters, onto the battlefield. And you can pay 1 and tap it to give it a 1/1 counter. So you can play it early as turn 2 as a 1/1, and then keep leveling it up, leveling it up, leveling it up. This card's very good. I think it's probably going to go underrated at first, but it has a huge impact on the board. So number 3, Hangerback Walker. Number 2, I'm going with Pia and Kiran Nalaar, Chandra's parents, as it were. And just like the Whirler Rogue, these guys can put a lot of power and toughness on the field for 4 mana. Also, the added addition that they can sacrifice an artifact to deal 2 damage to a target creature or player. And it doesn't just have to be the artifacts that they put into the battlefield. So, very powerful card, Pia and Kiran Nalaar. Number 2 rare, definitely. Number 1 rare, I'm going to go with Hixis, the Prison Warden. This card has extreme upside and is a huge flash creature for 2 white, 3 colorless. So I don't think it gets much better than that. Hixis Prison Warden can completely warp a game. It's kind of like a Banisher Priest at flash if their opponent, makes some attack. As long as you're not very low on life, you can flash in the Hixis, take some damage, exile all of their creatures until Hixis returns to the battlefield. Leaves the battlefield. And I think this card is going to have a huge impact on any time it's played. Now, my top pick for the Mythic, I'm just going to name the number 1 Mythic, in my opinion, for Magic Origins, and I'm going to go with the Woodland Bellower. Now, I know Magic Origins is all about the Planeswalkers and everything like that, but Woodland Bellower, 2 green, 4 colors, 6/5, and you get to put a non-legendary green creature with convert mana cost 3 or less from your library onto the battlefield. So just extreme value. You're always gonna want to open this in your sealed pool or draft, and I think it's gonna have a great impact for anybody that's able to do so. So Woodland Bellower, number 1 Mythic. Hope you guys enjoyed this look at the top 3 commons, uncommons, and rares, in addition to the number 1 Mythic. And remember, this is for Magic Origins. Hope you guys enjoyed. Take it easy.
Thanks, Kenji, for giving us a heads up on drafting the set. I'll be sure to consider those cards highly in my next draft. Next up, let's see what caught Adam Styborski's eye for Commander.
Hey everybody, it's Adam Styborski, Command Tower writer for DailyMTG.com, content manager for Gathering Magic, and I want to talk to you about Commander in Magic Origins. There's a bunch of new cards, a bunch of new legendary creatures that become planeswalkers that then do more things at the same time. Lots of stuff going on. I just want to talk to you about 4 cards. 1 for every rarity that I think every player should pick up for Commander. Blue and green definitely win this round if you're keeping track of which cards I think are the best for sets. And I'm going to start off with Artificer's Epiphany. This is 2 and a blue for a common instant. Draw 2 cards. If you don't control an artifact, discard a card. I love these kind of cards. Getting an instant at common is great because you can hold up mana for other things. You can wait to see what opponents do. You can use it during the end step. It gives you the most flexibility. Counter spells, things like that, you want to keep waiting. You can do that. Otherwise, you can just filter a card away, find your land drop early in the game. In the late game, you can set up something you want to reanimate or get rid of something that you don't need anymore. Just the ability to draw 2 cards and maybe discard, maybe even not have to, is great. The second card is an uncommon. It's blue and a black, 3 blue-black for Possessed Scab. This is one of those Innistrad flavored cards from when Liliana planeswalks for the first time from Dominaria, and this is awesome. It's a 3/2 body, so it's a little on the small side for 5 mana, and when it dies, you have to exile it. So it seems like it's all downside here. But when it enters the battlefield, you get back an instant or a sorcery or a creature card, and that is awesome. I love recursion effects. I think they're really great in Commander. I'm not a big fan of cycling them over and over and over and over, and that kind of gets old after a while. But Possessed Scab, at least being able to get it once, or if you mill it to the graveyard or discard it, you can always reanimate it that way too. That works. If it's already in the graveyard, anything that you get back in Commander is going to be good. The ability to set up a big turn later in the game, or just get back another way of digging for more lands or a removal spell early on is awesome. The third card is a rare Mana Gorger Hydra. Holy crap. I love this card. I'm a big fan of Torian Mauler, Sunscorch Regent, Forgotten Agent. All of these cards trigger off of spells that are played. Forgotten Agent triggers off of any player's spell, just like Mana Gorger Hydra. And the cheap cost that you have to pay for this, just 2 and a green mana, is awesome. You can play it early. It just grows and grows and grows. People are going to have to pay attention to it eventually because it also has Trample, which is great. Unlike Torian Mauler and Forgotten Agent, which kind of just all stay on the same creature, sometimes you can move the counters around. Sunscorched Regent is better because it flies, so it's already jumping over a bunch of creatures. But the fact that it has Trample means they have to kill it. Just having a couple blockers or having a way of kind of bumping it off for a turn or two doesn't work. Once it's big enough, it's going to start hurting opponents. So you're going to get some attention with it, and you don't have to spend anything other than 3 mana to start wrecking face. The final card also costs 2 and a green, and it's absolutely hands down my favorite card in Magic Origins, and that's Nissa, Vastwood Seer. She transforms into a Planeswalker, and I'll get to that in a minute. But basically, you get a Wood Elves. 2 and a green for a 2/2 Elf Scout, actually. It's a little bigger. And when she enters the battlefield, you get to search for a basic forest card and put it in your hand. Okay. Doesn't sound that cool. When you play the 7th land that you control, or if you have at least 7 and you play an 8th or 9th, or whenever you have her out, and you already have 7 lands, you flip her over into her Planeswalker side. And she's just great. You get a card draw engine that looks at the top card of your library. You either get to draw it, or if it's a land, you put it onto the battlefield. So you're just ramping even more, getting card advantage. You can take 2 counters off and make a 4/4. It's legendary, so you don't get to keep making 4/4s. But if you're trying to win making 4/4s, so there are better ways to do it. But you can kind of make a big defender to defend herself. And her ultimate ability of untapping lands and making them into 6/6 elementals is just great. Just everything you kind of want from an early game card that makes sure you hit your early land drop, to a late game card that can turn a bunch of extra lands into real threats that are going to scare opponents, while being a draw engine unto herself, is just awesome. So those are my 4 picks for Magic Origins for Commander. I'm hoping you've got some picks too. Put them in the comments below. I'm going to check in, see what you guys think, and I hope I get to learn something. Thanks.
Well said, Adam. Those are some pretty solid cards that I would jam into EDH any day. Next up is Kevin, our rogue deck builder. Let's see what the mad scientist has in store for us today.
Hi there, it's Kevin with RogueDeckBuilder.com. GatheringMagic.com has asked me to pick my top 3 cards to brew around in Standard with MTG Origins. Now, a little bit of a backstory about me. I'm not your typical spike or competitive player that just likes to play the best cards possible. I actually like to look at cards to brew around in a particular deck that have a lot of synergies and combos, or just plain fun to brew around. And this set, let me tell you, is just a plain treat, and it was actually hard for me to narrow it down to 3, so I'm going to do 3 in an honorable mention just because the honorable mention is quite the wacky deck that I'm going to try to brew around. We'll go with the number 3 card being the Harbinger of Tides. Harbinger of Tides, I think, is the card that solidifies Mono Blue being more playable. I mean, it's a very powerful card in Modern Merfolk, but I think that in Standard, the way it does deserve a focus because it's the 2-drop that we are missing. It has a very, very powerful ability. It's going to be able to bounce elves back to the Elvish Mystics back to their hand after they've tapped that turn. Or if people have tacked in with a Swift Spear, you'll be able to bounce it back to the hand. I don't know how powerful that will be since Swift Spear has haste. Or anything that a mono red or a fast deck is attacked with, you can bounce it back to their hand. And it's a pretty powerful. We're going to have to test it to see how good it will be in Modern, but I think it's going to be very powerful in Standard, especially the ability to flash it in for just a few more mana and then bounce it back. But it's perfect. We already have the 3-drop slot with Shore Crasher Elemental and a few other cards there's like Cloud Form, Shore Crasher Elemental, or the Exploit counter target creature spell that Mono Blue Devotion has, but we're really missing a 2-drop. The Frost Elemental just quite hasn't done the job in Mono Blue, and I think that Harbinger of the Tides is going to be that perfect piece to bring back the good old Master of Waves and Thassa Mono Blue. So I'm really excited to have one more chance at Mono Blue Devotion before it rotates. The next card is actually, a lot of people are talking about this as a very competitive card, and has been referred to as Oath of Druid's Light. This one is Evolutionary Leap. I particularly like Evolutionary Leap because it's a sack outlet that I've been begging for. Right now I've been using Other sack outlets that I guess aren't as powerful. This sack outlet allows you basically to draw a card, and not only draw a card, but it's going to allow you to get a specific creature. So in decks, I've liked, and you can always tutor this up with like commune with the gods. So I'm going to look for some sort of self-mill strategy with Evolutionary Leap, with commune with the gods, grab Evolutionary Leap, and then just start killing cards. I was thinking of like Elvish Visionaries that draw a card when they come into play, or if you go into blue, you have the Palace Familiar, as well as the Jeskai Sage that draw cards when they die. So you're going to want to look at value cards like that to use with Evolutionary Leap to then find more combo pieces, and then use some sort of strategy to get them back out of the graveyard, like Rally of the Ancestors is what I'm thinking. But even without that, you can just use good old value-based creatures and be able just to kind of go a good stuff deck and just progressively get a better board state. I'm thinking even in Abzan, this can work great with Siege Rhinos that already got their value out, or just sacrificing something early, like I said, an Elvish Visionary to draw a card, basically draw 2 cards off of it, stabilize, and then Satyr Wayfinder. Again, there's just a lot of value in this set, or in this standard right now that gets its value when it comes out, and then if you are able to sacrifice and get more value, that's even better. So Evolutionary Leap is going to be a very powerful card in Standard. We do have a lot of hate for enchantments right now, but even if you activate it just once or twice, it gets its value. Now, the next card is another one that isn't quite unique. It's a card that a lot of people have been talking about. It is Shaman of the Pact. This card is an elf. We all love elf decks. Elves was one of the very first tribal decks I ever made as a little kid back in 5th grade. I remember building my little elf deck and going to town with it. And we do have Elvish Mystic right now. We will lose Elvish Mystic, but I think there's enough elves, especially we know that Zendikar is an elf heavy set. Nissa herself is an elf, and we're probably going to get more elves after rotation. But for now, we have plenty of elves through Elvish Visionary, Elvish Mystic, and just there's a few lords right now that can be used with the elves. But Shaman of the Pact is exactly what the elf decks wants, because it's going to give them a lot more range when it comes into play, make an opponent lose life. So in an elf aggro deck, you're going to be able to get in there for some very aggressive plays early on, and then Shaman of the Pact is going to be a nice little finisher. Again, this is going to be a card that I think is going to work great with Rally of the Ancestors, and everyone knows my obsession for Rally of the Ancestors, so looking forward to Shaman of the Pact. Now, my honorable mention, just because I want to build one of those wacky, crazy decks, I had a deck back in the day called Grand Theft Ashiok, where you try to kill your opponent exclusively with their cards. Now, the thing we used in Grand Theft Ashiok was a card called Daring Thief. Daring Thief is inspired when you untap it, you can exchange control of a permanent that shares a permanent type with your opponent. And there's also another 6-mana spell at a cons that you can do the same thing. And Demonic Pact is the card from Origins that is going to be kind of my goal out of this standard, is to win a few games by giving my opponent the Demonic Pact and winning that way. So basically, Demonic Pact allows you 3 great options. In the 4th one, you lose the game. That's when you're going to want to switch it over. In a Sultai type list, you'll have a lot of ways to kill your own Demonic Pact if you need to. I'll be running Reclamation Sages and just get a lot of value out of your own Demonic Pact. There's plenty of enchantments to switch right now with your opponent. Your opponent could have cards like Courser of Krufix. There are plenty of just enchantment creatures that still see play, like Eidolon of the Great Revel. But our little strategy, our super secret tech, is going to be the Pharika, and the ability to give your opponent an enchantment creature and then have that with Demonic Pact, then switch over is something I'm going to be looking forward to doing in Standard. So anyway, those are my top 3 cards. Let me know what your top 3 cards to brew around in Standard is in the comment section below. Thanks for watching.
And there you have it. Thanks, Kevin. Those are some pretty good ideas. Lastly, we're going to go ahead and go over my modern picks from Magic Origins. I'm going to go ahead and go over 4 cards, one for each rarity, so let's get started. At common, we have Calculated Dismissal. Now before I get into it, let me just say that this card is a common. Calculated Dismissal is an instant for 2 and a blue that says counter target spell unless its controller pays 3. It has Spell Mastery. If there are 2 or more instants and or sorcery cards in your graveyard, scry 2. This card's pretty good at common. Its ability to play defensively and help you find what you need is very good, and although 3 mana is quite high for a counterspell in Modern, it does some pretty heavy lifting. I can easily see this card in decks like Grixis Control and Jeskai Control. At uncommon, It can be no other card than Shaman of the Pack. Yeah, I can't even begin to describe how many people will lose to this card. Elves in Modern has already taken off thanks to Collected Company, and with the help of what they already had in terms of mana generators, it's quite possibly the deadliest deck in the format, and this card continues to push that issue. Now, for those of you that might think I'm being biased in what I'm saying about Elves, I absolutely hate that deck. If I were to be truly biased, I'd be picking Magmatic Insight for Storm. On to the rare. At rare, we have Hallowed Moonlight. Hallowed Moonlight is the equalizer for the white mages that try to play the game fairly. This card stops so many decks dead in its tracks. Splinter Twin gets countered by this, Gifts Ungiven decks get stopped, and even Collected Company gets the hand. This also is sweet at stopping any tokens from being generated by good cards such as Lingering Souls. This card also cantrips, so it's not even like it's taking up a card in your hand. I expect this to see play in almost every sideboard of any deck that can provide white. Heck, in Storm I'm playing these and one Hallowed Fountain just to stop the silly nonsense that Collected Company makes happen. Finally, the best mythic rare of the set for Modern is a hard call to make. But if I'm being really honest, then I have to say it's the Queen of Black Magic, Liliana Heretical Healer. I can't think of a card that does more than Liliana can do from this set. Her stats seem quite low for a creature for Modern, but she's so easy to turn on the right deck. A perfect example of abuse on this card would be Malira Company. Using Viscera Seer, you can respond to removal by simply sacrificing one of your combo pieces, and voila! You have a Planeswalker that helps your combo. There are certainly decks that I would be surprised to see playing this card, but even so, it's easily the card I suspect to do gruesome things in Modern. Alrighty, well that's all we have for today. Hopefully there's a bunch of truth in what we have said today, but for those of you who want to discuss our picks, just leave the love in the comment section below. As always, this has been Ricardo with Gathering Magic. Thanks for stopping by.